To remove either of the drive shaft flanges, they come out pretty simply. Just put a slide hammer on these, connect them. They are an M10 bolt, and then just pop them out, and they come out surprisingly easily. As you can see, that popped out very, very easily. When you're pulling this out, just be a little bit careful because it's going to come through a double seal here and then another seal at the end here. So be nice and gentle with those. Now she comes at the end. This is the circlip that just gets pushed in as it slots in, and that's the thing that holds it in place. When you're installing, these should just slot straight in, and with a gentle tap of a mallet, they should just compress the circlip and just pop straight into the differential. I've had these sometimes where the bits at the ends here, instead of sort of going around like that, so where they compress and they sort of stick out a little bit, and if that's the case, I would be pulling that off. It's easy enough just to remove that and just bend those in a little bit. So it still needs to be sitting proud of the splines, so it holds it in place. But what you don't want to do is have those sticking up, because it'll really bind up and they can hurt the circlip on the way in and damage it, and also it just makes it really hard to get in. When you're installing the long shaft from this side over here, if you've got the transmission like this, it's pretty simple to watch that go through and put it through the double seal there. But if the transmission's in the car, you won't be able to see that, so just be really careful. It's not like the shaft can sort of flop around all over the place. It sort of guides it into the right spot, but just be a little bit careful. I'd have the equivalent end covered in fluid, just so it nicely guides in there and doesn't damage the seal. On this side here, there's a seal on the outside, and there's also a needle roller bearing on the inside which supports the shaft. If you want to remove this item, then there are just 5 screws and this whole thing comes straight off. There is a metal gasket on the other side there. I'm not sure if that's replaceable from Porsche or not, but I think it would be, what I would do if I couldn't get hold of a new one of those is I would just put some RTV sealant on either side of it, and that should seal it perfectly well. And with those screws removed, of note they're M8 and they are 25mm long. That thing just pulls straight out, and there's that gasket there. For differential removal, the way this all fits together, you've got the differential that sits inside on 2 tapered roller bearings, 1 on each side. The cover on the front here is all these screws. You remove those and the whole thing just flops straight out, so be ready with that. The differential's pretty heavy and it'll just fall straight out. There's a big O-ring on the inside here. That is the thing that does the sealing. So the metal pieces actually are hard up against each other. And with all those screws removed, note they're all M8 and 25mm long. Then the differential, as we pull it off, will just come out like that. You can see we've got the big O-ring on the inside that does all the sealing. There's our differential with the bearings on either side. You can see the output from the transmission, that's the pinion shaft there. On the inside here is the race for the bearing. There's also a shim on the inside of that, and the same on this one here. So if you want to, you can actually remove that out, it'll turn. There we go. So on the inside there's a shim, which is the thing that sets the clearances correctly. Make sure you don't lose that, and that needs to go in first. On the other side here, it's the same setup, so you've got the bearing race and the shim on the inside, but it's held by this piece of metal here, just by this tab that goes down there. So if you want to remove that for whatever reason, then you can remove those 4 screws and the inner race will come out. But you don't really need to do that for pretty much any purpose other than replacing the bearings, because if you wanted to replace this double seal, for example, you don't need to do that. That can just come and get pulled straight out from there. If I've removed the differential and I don't need to leave this off, I'm going to always put this back on. Just lightly put the bolts in just to protect these sealing faces, because you don't want any of these to get damaged. And for install, it's pretty simple, just to plonk that in place. Much simpler if the differential's sitting there like that, because you can just lower it into it. And it doesn't just want to fall out, but you can do it from here where you sort of put everything up put that up over the top of it and then put the screws in place again.